Okay, we're back. We're back finally. All right. Sorry, technical difficulties. It seems that the webinar is supposed to be now, and the webinar software is having some delay in sending out the notifications to the rest of our attendees. So maybe we're going to do the webinar twice today. We'll have a practice round, and we'll go ahead and hit it up now, and then we can do it again in an hour. Anyway, well, I'll
So
just.
we have 5 people here.
Let's just start. Let's just do one now, and we'll figure out. We can do it again. We know this stuff. It's great.
Okay.
It's fine.
I'm kind of curious to see how many of that from our team are in. Okay.
Well, we're live, so we're just gonna do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we're just gonna do it. So
Do it.
do it. All right, you guys are getting to see us work on the fly. This is fantastic, right? Because it's what we do. All right. Well, I want to say welcome. Today's webinar is going to be on website speed. We're very glad that you joined us today. We're super passionate about all things website health. So Valet has taken an oath this year to try and help website owners make sense of the options and opinions of running a healthy website. So we're super grateful that you've joined us today. We can't wait to talk to you a bit more about this topic. And we're going to jump right in and take a look at what we're going to be covering.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. So what does Valet do? Well, first of all, our team is 100% remote, if you couldn't already tell based upon the fact that time zones are hard, as we're finding out today. Certainly can be an issue. You'll find us in Seattle to Florida, all the way in places like Portugal and Serbia, and many, many places in between. We provide WordPress migration, support, consultation, and maintenance as a professional service. We live at the intersections of the tools and strategies you're using each day to grow your business. Your hardware, where the server that hosts your website, your software, that's WordPress, it's your themes, it's your plugins, and your digital strategy, which takes on many forms, from Google Analytics and Facebook pixel snippets to Google Tag Manager, Google Search Console, email signups, and on and on and on it goes, as I'm sure you already know. Our job is to help our clients make all of these things work together so they can focus on their businesses, clients, customers, donors, students, whatever and whomever their passions and missions lie.
So we should maybe do a quick introduction before we hop right into all of the good stuff. My name is Kimberly. I'm co-founder and CEO at Valet, and my job is to really just make sure the fantastic team that we have has everything that they need to do their job. So I'm going to be moderating and kind of admitting just a little bit today. Josh and Eric are going to be the folks that are going to give you all the goods. So quick technical notes. This will be recorded. You will get an email with access to the recording whenever it's done. Make sure you turn off any background processes that may slow down your reception of the webinar, and take notes, ask questions, and enjoy. Eric.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. I'm Eric, the support lead here at Valet, and as you can see, we have Josh here, our lead developer as well, who will be dealing with all the technical bits. And yeah, as Kim said, you'll be getting this. Are we going to send Kim everyone this practice run, or the one that we do in an hour?
This isn't a practice run. There are 7 people and we're live, so it might go out to somebody. We'll see.
So our for those who are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this works much the same, the hierarchy of site health here. You first establish the most basic and essential needs of your website before venturing further. So starting with security, both you and your visitors know your website is safe and secure, and then you can journey on with confidence, right? Once security has been satisfied, you want to think about speed. If a website is safe but loads slowly, users will leave. So you want to ensure that your load times are fast enough that users want to stick around. So the website is safe and snappy, but how about the navigation? Are users able to get around easily? Do you need to address usability? You want to be able to use your website. Having a secure, fast-loading, easy-to-use website is awesome, but what good does it do if you don't have any traffic, right? So if you don't have traffic, you don't want to think about conversions. So today we're going to look specifically at the speed portion of it. So we've made our introductions, we've outlined the hierarchy of site health. So let's dive into that speed layer and look at WordPress, third-party plugins and themes. Josh.
All right. So before actually going into this slide here and what I want to talk about as far as the title shows, just to preface everything that I'm going to talk about today, what I want to say is speed is incredibly complex and broad. Figuring it out can be really overwhelming. Everybody has their different opinions on what speed means to them, what metric they're trying to improve. And often when you're debugging it, you're probably trying to debug it on a desktop device, right? But the actual environment of where speed problems occur isn't always just in the desktop, right? It's on your mobile phone. It's if you're out and not at home on a Wi-Fi, but you're on 3G, how fast it is there. It's just wide and complex. So we're going to start talking from just general practices and fundamentals and things that we think that you need to really have in place, some thought processes that you need to have in place before you can allow yourself to really get lost in the weeds. Because it's really easy to get lost in the weeds. I found myself in it plenty of times where I just open up Chrome DevTools and go right in and then I'm lost. And so being able to pull yourself out and see the forest before you get lost in the trees is very beneficial here. So that's what I wanted to point out. A lot of our opinions are influenced by our business model. We do focus a lot on WordPress, and we support a lot of sites and monitor speed for them. So you'll see a lot of our opinions kind of come through on that. All right, so let's talk about WordPress, third-party themes and plugins. But WordPress is awesome, right? So it has a vibrant ecosystem. That's why a lot of us here, at least for us, have jobs. The community the ecosystem, the community just makes it really easy to build a website. There's also a downside to that, though, right? So you go out there and you can pick a nice pre-built theme with all these features, and you look at the list of features, and man, I could really see myself having that. And it's nice. They kind of just give it to you. But over a year or two, depending on who's managing and who's working with it, you can find yourself in a lot of technical debt pretty quickly. So I think it's important to define who you are in relation to what your role is for the website, because speed issues are often created by humans that make decisions, right? That's just the reality of it. So are you the person who is hired to maintain this website and by yourself, and you have a ton of control yourself? You have the ability to change things and tweak things as granular as you possibly want it. Are you the marketing person that, the website is your responsibility and it's your job to translate the technical issues to anybody else in your company? Or are you the business owner that, you know enough to be dangerous? It's important to know who you are and how much you want to get done, how much you can affect speed, right? I think that all kind of translates into, well, how much resources do you have? Resources is absolutely what kind of skill set you have and control. What I mean by control is to really have a true sense of speed or control over speed on your site, you need to have control. The thing with WordPress is that if you're building a site based on WordPress and all these prepackaged third-party things, which I love, by the way, I'm not trying to knock that stuff, but those things are releasing updates all the time. And sometimes those things are providing features that are your real bottleneck to your speed issues. So now you're in a situation, well, I know that feature is, that slider or whatever it is providing a speed issue. I need to either replace it or just accept that it's a speed problem, but it's giving me good user UX benefit, right? So that's tough, right? Because replacing it could be a completely different experience, and it's going to cost you time and money. So those are the things I want to point out if you're part of a large company. Usually large companies have really good dedicated resource and they're chipping away and testing speed all the time. Not many companies have that. So that's something I wanted to point out here before we kind of get into the weeds and such. Kim, did you mention something?
Yeah, I was just going to say this. there seems to be, I don't know if it's a gap in knowledge or misconception that we find, or that I've seen in the community myself, just coming in as a user, over a decade ago, that when you get a tool, it just works. And I never really thought when I first started how deep does that go, and exactly how does that function with all the other things. So that I have piled onto this CMS. So I think there's a opening yourself up to that gap of thought of like, oh, wait a minute, this needs to be updated. How does this even work? What does it interact with? Those things that kind of control, like you said, some of those decisions, right? You make a decision to put it on, you make a decision to have all these settings, you make a decision to access a site through a specific browser. So there's just some things that we take for granted being internet users, day in and day out.
Right. Not to mention the fact that a lot of the tools that we use evolve and change, and it's very fluid. And what may, take so many resources today, fast forward a year or maybe even a few months, it can change a great deal.
Cool. Well, the scenario I gave there, what was that scenario where you have a bottleneck and such? So I hit that, so we can move on to the next one here where we talk about our fundamentals and such.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Josh. It seems like a situation sometimes where we kind of have, have your cake and eat it too situation. Like you have to, at the end of the day, make choices, right, between, possibly a slider or something that may look nice versus speed, and you have to make those choices, right? And that's why it's so important to be in control. So yeah, let's look at the technical foundations and fundamentals, Josh.
Cool. All right, so we think, in my opinion, these things need to be in place always, regardless of whatever your site is, right? What's a WordPress, something else. If these things aren't in place, then you shouldn't be getting into the weeds of your smaller issues that you can start chipping away at, right? So hosting. I think if you ask anybody about speed, you need to have, that's the support of your entire site, right? When you have a house, you have the foundation, that's incredibly important. So typically in the WordPress space, people go for managed hosting, and a lot of those, if you're wondering, well, what's the tech specs on those, or what's the hardware and such, a lot of them use cloud hosting nowadays. And so they're not really advertising, the type of hardware and such. It's all good, right? I think the real way to test those is just testing each of them yourself to see, how it feels. And let's face it, with managed hosts, at least you're probably picking a plan based on how much traffic you're getting, right? If you're hosting that site yourself, then you probably know what you're doing, right? And you're probably going to something like DigitalOcean or Linode and having a service, maybe use and configure that, and you're configuring that, yourself. What I like to see from hosts are them being opinionated and forward about how they handle other components of speed. Typically, you see that in caching. Every host handles caching differently. Sometimes they build their own solution. Sometimes they use an existing one but configure it differently. I've seen every single one do it differently. Same thing with CDNs and how they tell you how they do it. If it's not a black box, that's important to me. I like to see opinionated opinions around that. So host is really important. Page caching. What is it? So page caching is when your website generates HTML and it puts it out in the browser. There's HTML that could be reused again. Instead of loading that page, going back to the server and asking the server for, to regenerate the HTML again, why not just save a copy of it and use it over and over and over again? That site and that content's not going to change for a while, so why not use it for over and over and over again? So caching it away and then pulling it back up is much faster than asking the server to do it again. You'd be surprised how many people aren't using page caching, or they don't know that they don't have it going on because maybe some kind of feature is preventing it from happening. So it's something to check. And a lot of managed hosts out there, this is a built-in feature as part of that web host. And so I like when it's built in. I don't always necessarily like using a plugin. Popular ones out there, W3 Rocket, W3 Total Cache, and such. Great plugins. I just prefer if it's part of the actual platform. Object caching is storing data. So instead of storing HTML, storing data. We've done work where an entire page is loading a ton of data from some other external resource, like an API. That takes a long time. So calling that API, loading that data, displaying it, why not just save that data and use it over and over and over again before you go call that API again? So that's object caching. I would more worry about page caching first before you take a look at object caching. With WordPress, if you're a WordPress person here, WordPress already has that built in, but there's other services that kind of make that faster. And you can look at things like Redis or Memcache. CDN use, just to define it, is a content distributed network. So your site loads images and JavaScript files and CSS files. And what a CDN does is, say that the main server is, I don't know, in California, right? Well, a CDN will put servers around the world globally, and it'll take your assets, so assets of your pictures and your JavaScript and CSS, and it'll put copies of those on those servers around the world. So if I live in Florida, but there's a server closer to me in Atlanta, well, getting that data from Atlanta instead of California is much faster. So that's the concept of a CDN, and most hosts offer that. I think that's really important for your images and JavaScript, CSS files, etc. Image optimization. For us, we recommend that a lot, right? Because we work with a lot of content distributors. Sometimes they have full editorial teams, and a lot of times they're uploading images that are just not optimized. So I think it's a good idea to always have something in place that's just always handling the optimization of images, even if you're not optimizing them before you upload them and such. One service we really like is Imagify. There's several out there. They're really affordable and cheap, and I think that you guys should pay for them because they provide a ton of value. When you look at images, there's topics like progressive JPEGs. What that is when you load your page, it'll load kind of like a fuzzy image at first because it's quicker, and it will get it on the screen quicker than loading it the entire quality at first. And that can help you load your page quicker so people can start consuming content quicker above the fold. Although there is an argument against how friendly is that for user experience, because you're giving them a fuzzy image at first rather than a full, fully displayed one. Google's coming out with the WebP format. It's kind of new. I don't see it kind of coming across the landscape as quickly yet, at least not in the WordPress space, but it's something to take a look at for. And then there's lazy loading. Lazy loading is great because there's whole user experience of how fast a page loads. And so when you load a page, all those images below the fold that you can't see just yet, well, just load those later. So when you scroll down the page, you can load those, as opposed to just loading them all at once, where that'll prevent the entire page from loading quicker. So in our opinion, these are the things that you should have in place as far as the foundation, and that will really get you into, once you feel good about these things, then you can kind of explore the ticky-tack things throughout your site that are really holding it back.
So just to clarify, everything on this page, the only thing that you said people really should pay for that shouldn't be rolled into the hosting separately is just the image optimization, right? So everything else you can take care of just by picking a good host.
Yeah.
Which is, I know that's the number one thing everybody knows, pick a good host if you want a fast site, right? But and a lot of the core components should be built in, but you're not suggesting that everybody goes out and pays for separate services for all these things.
Well, image optimization is I've never seen part of a host. I think you should pay for image optimization. It's really cheap. But everything else is usually part of the host. And so in your monthly payment, those first four things, 2, 3, and 4 are almost always included. So that's what I'm saying.
I just didn't want there to be any interpretation of we're saying throw money at it, because it's not. It's not it at all.
Yeah, we found that when we bring on new clients who are doing a site assessment, that is usually the blind spot. What's usually covered by the hosting, the page caching, object caching, CDN, it's like, flying colors, and then we always get to the image optimization, and 9 out of 10 times it's wah-wah, and we need to use something like Imagify or another image optimization service to bring that score up. And not even just the score, but what we're going to be talking about next, which is the user's perception of speed. It's easy to sign up for your services and have all your tech lined up, but there's a little bit more than meets the eye when it comes to those numbers, right, Josh?
Yeah. So I think this entire webinar, this is the section that you should take away and research and feel really good about after, because this is where speed and measuring speed is really going. So if you ignore the raw speed numbers and your speed test scores for a second, right? Because you might be used to dropping your URL into web page test or Google page speed or pingdom or whatever those are, and you're getting a grade back. But if you ignore that for a second and you just load the page on your mobile phone or your desktop, does it feel, as a human, does it feel fast, right? So that's a user's perception of speed, and Google's kind of leading the way on defining these metrics and how they get measured. Somewhat new, right? But it's getting pushed out there quicker, and I think these are going to be the leading metrics that people need to start optimizing for. And if you do, then the rest of your metrics will just kind of take care of itself. So if you Google this, user-centric performance metrics, you're going to find yourself at the first result on Google, and there's a page that is from Google, and there's a video there from one of their conferences that explains some of these user-centric performance metrics. It's a very technical talk, but I think it's worth your time if this piques your interest, and I think it should. Some of the examples that you'll see are the metric examples are first paint, first contentful paint, and then first meaningful paint, all meaning different things, but it all kind of boils down to how quickly is the user able to see the content as soon as they hit enter on their address URL, and how quickly are they able to consume content. So what does consume mean? How quickly can they see that picture? How quickly can they read what's on your homepage or what's on your landing page or what's on your blog post? How quickly can they do those things? That's important. What I would suggest is just learning more about these metrics, right? In Chrome DevTools, if you start researching that, you can find through their performance audit tool, which is really good videos out there on how to use that. How do you find what those metrics are? What are the certain things happening on that page that might be impacting these metrics? And then I would look at different pages, not just your home page. So pick the ones that are important. Is it the one that's a landing page and converting people on whatever your conversion is? Is it a checkout page? Whatever it is, test those pages as well. Your home page is a completely different page than your other ones, and ones might perform really well against the others. So pick those pages and look at these user perception metrics, because this is where everything's going, in my opinion. And it's a little bit difficult to tackle at first. And can be overwhelming, but if this is the thing you're going to get into the weeds on and get lost in anything, it should be the user's perception of speed and these metrics and what impacts them. So that's the entire message that we want to give for this section of the webinar here.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh.
It's not you, it's me. It's not me, it's you.
Yep. Yeah, something like that. Awesome. So we look at some of the technical foundations and fundamentals, the all important user perception of speed, which, I mean, let's face it, that's where it's at, just like you said, Josh. Of course, many of those users are on mobile. An increasing percentage, year after year, we see a rise in mobile use and internet consumption through mobile devices. So how does this play into the picture of speed?
Yeah, I think as technical people, and I'm assuming if you're a technical person watching this webinar, your first way of debugging speed is probably looking at the desktop experience, and I'm guilty of that too, right? It's very easy and accessible for me to look at that. So I think a lot of us forget about mobile, but it's no secret that at least Google and other search engines, they're starting to index your site based on the mobile experience, and so there's no argument that says, well, maybe you should probably just focus on the speed of your mobile site, right? Because if you do, then the efforts that you make here will just also trickle up. I can't say trickle down, trickle up to your desktop experience, right? Anything you improve there on your mobile, because you're probably loading that page on a mobile network, right? 3G or 4G, whatever it is. And that's not as fast as Wi-Fi or whatever network that you might be running on, or your home connection, whatever it is. So if you optimize there, you're probably going to bet that it's going to, show the fruits of that labor will show its benefits in desktop. So that's kind of what we want to get across here as far as mobile. I think it's an obvious thing, but I think it's worth just mentioning because that's a reality, in my opinion. And that's it for mobile.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that as so many years of talking about, the difference of mobile and desktop and responsive design and stuff like that, it's easy to think that it bleeds over into other areas, that it's somehow so different when really it's not. As you've outlined here, efforts made on mobile speed is going to show up on desktop, which is a win-win, right?
Yep. All right. So we're putting all this together. Right? We can just go into
Who's
it.
putting it all together?
I think I took your transition there, Eric. Sorry.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay. All right. So if we just take what we just talked about here, getting the fundamentals in place is real important, right? So take a look at hosting, page caching, object caching, image optimization, CDNs. You've got to get that stuff in place first, right? It's got to be consistent across whatever you're using. Pick your most important pages, test it across mobile. These tools out there, they're going to give you suggestions. And so you should use those suggestions as kind of a guide as to where you should go. And use the suggestions you get for mobile. I would say do that across a few speed tools, right? They all have different opinions. And if you do that across different mobile speed tools, you kind of get a theme for what's going on. You should be able to identify a bottleneck or a theme, maybe too many images, or you just got a lot of JavaScript and all these third-party things going on. And then you kind of know where to start first, right? And then it's up to you to decide, well, what should I prioritize as what my skill set is? What can I realistically accomplish first, or what can I ask for help on? So that's what I think that's an important way to think about it and maintain that thought process as you're approaching speed. If you don't have the resources yourself, get an assessment done. We do an assessment ourselves. We do site speed assessments where we can kind of break down what your bottlenecks are and give you next steps as to what we think priority-wise you should tackle.
Based on all the concepts that you presented today, right? Like this is not stuff that we've searched the internet for and collected together. This is based on our active speed assessment process that we've pulled out kind of the nuggets and the stuff that's not too technically deep to chat with people.
And then on a schedule, you should monitor your results. There's services out there there's a lot of them that it'll do speed checks on your site daily. And that's important because if you find maybe like on a chart, the speed starts to come off a little bit or start to slow down, something happened at that point, right? So you can go back in time saying, well, on this day, it really looks like it's starting to take off a little bit. What happened on that day? Maybe maybe if it's on WordPress, maybe it was a certain update, right? That's important because then you can identify those things quicker and then make a knowledgeable change when it happens, right? That's having a point of reference in time is really powerful. So I want to make sure to highlight that there. So that's putting it all together.
Awesome, Josh.
So it looks like we have some tips now that you've put it all together for us. What's the secret? What's the secret sauce, man?
Yeah, so these tips here are just unsorted. Some things I want to mention to you. Okay, so let's just go into it. Got it? Oh, I'll do it. Okay. All right. Kitchen sink themes. I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, at least with WordPress. It gives you the kitchen sink, gives you the entire, all the features and such. While they're not preferable, I think they're fine if you maintain a small and simple site.
I think there are also selective themes that fit inside this category that you might call kitchen sink themes that are probably some are better than others.
Yeah. It's just, you know, we've seen sites where people use these, are so attractive, and I get it. They are attractive, but they create hundreds, and I've seen thousands of pages, all creating these different features, and it just becomes a technical snowball debt, or a snowball of technical debt. I'm sorry. So you just want, I think they're okay for the smaller brochure type sites, but if you're about to do some larger things, it's probably worth your time to stay simple, and something that can scale pretty wide.
That even relates to kitchen sink plugins as well, yeah?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I haven't. They're out there for sure.
There's some big slider plugins. I won't name any names.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've seen a slider that is just used on the home page impact the entire site on other pages.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So many times. Speaking of sliders, don't use them. So if you go to shouldIuseacarousel.com, it'll give you some compelling reasons to why you should use. They don't do anything. They don't do anything for conversion. They're just flashy, right? So do your research on this, but they're not helping you. Okay, downsides of Google Tag Manager. If you don't know what Google Tag Manager is, everybody needs to add tracking things to their website. Google Analytics, Facebook Pixel, those kinds of things. Maybe you're trying to do heat map tracking to see how people are using your site and such. Or maybe a little chat box like Intercom in the bottom right-hand side. All of those things involve just adding a little snippet to your site, and over time, those can build up and cause a real problem. The thing with Google Tag Manager is that it makes it easy to do that, and that sounds like a good thing, right? So in the past, you would have to bother a developer to add that tag if you didn't to the site unless you know how to do it yourself. With Google Tag Manager, you just add one tag, and then you can log in the Google Tag Manager in Google and then add all the tags yourself. And this is really good for like a marketing team that says, hey, I want to track this, so I'm going to go add this tag, and I don't got to bother anybody. I just go to Google Tag Manager. Tracking scripts and Google Tag Manager really bring down speed if you let it. If you really need these things, make sure they're only running on the pages that you need them to. So analytics, I get it. But if it's something you want to track, like a landing page conversion, or make sure it's only running on that page, and Google Tag Manager gives you the ability to use that. The reason why these things really bring down the speed is because the way they load, they don't encourage the browser to cache them. So usually when you run a speed test, it'll say enable browser caching on these things, and typically they're the third-party scripts, Google Analytics, Facebook, Facebook Pixel, and they're not contributing to your overall user speed experience, and this is a problem. If you have the ability to not use Google Tag Manager, be more selective about where those tags go, you should do that. Or if in Google Tag Manager you have the ability to say, I only need these things to run on these certain pages, you should do that. So that's kind of what I wanted to point out there as far as Google Tag Manager, and it highlights my next point there on that external tracking services. Last one is minification helps. So what minification is, you take a CSS file or JavaScript file and you remove all the white space and you make it much smaller, right? So that's easier and smaller to download. Concatenation is when you take multiple scripts and you combine them and make them one file. There's plugins out there that will do this for you, often dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. You'll see concatenation happen just within a theme. Maybe someone builds a custom theme for you, and that's okay. But there's plugins out there that'll try to concatenate across the entire site. So different plugins that have no business interacting with each other or being part of one thing with each other, and because you're using concatenation to combine them into one file, you're now reorganizing the order of how those things should fire. I would say just don't do it.
You could potentially make your site slower by doing that, correct?
Or just outright break.
Yeah, yeah.
So those are the points there, and I think very specific, not so high level that we were kind of spending time in before. So yeah, those are my tips.
Those are great tips, Josh.
Josh has all the best tips. All the best tips. Right. Well, so that concludes the informative portion of our webinar today. Thank you for those of you who stuck with us through the technical difficulties. We will be doing this webinar again in 20 minutes. So if you want to see if it's better the second go around, why don't you log back on and join us. But honestly, really, truly, thank you for being here and allowing us to share just our experience, right? All of this knowledge really comes from a lot of experience and just kind of digging our hands into hundreds of client sites over the last few years and trying to really get a handle on the best things to just support website health, kind of just clarity, bring some clarity. So if you want to talk to us at all, you can reach out to us at hello@valet.io. I'm trying to double clicking here. I'm putting in a link in the chat right now with a button that connects you to a page on Valet that will give you, maybe, let's see, it might not go, so we'll just go ahead and I think I'd learn how to use the internet by now, huh? Let me go ahead and just drop the link in the chat there. That's a page where you have an active calendar if you want to talk to anybody at Valet at all. I will say if you are interested in a speed assessment, I think right now we only have space open for 3 if you want to get them done before the end of October. So we've got a pretty full queue at the moment. If you want to talk about scheduling it after that, that's totally fine. But if anything here makes you think, oh gosh, I'd really like to have somebody look a little bit deeper, part of what we do in those assessments is give you a roadmap to fixing all of those things as well. So I'm not just telling you what's wrong, which is would be terrible of us. Here's all the things that's wrong. We're not going to tell you how to fix them. We also do ongoing support, development, maintenance. If you pay attention to that healthcare hierarchy in the beginning, you'll notice that security for us was the very bottom. We believe that security should be accessible to everyone. So we do offer a small maintenance package that gets you all the basics, the bare bones, the backups, the software updates, visual regression testing, all that good stuff. So along with full website health assessments, speed assessments, of course. And we love to do migrations. We cut our teeth in WordPress on migrations. We've been doing them for over 10 years. So I guess that's it. If anybody has any questions, feel free to post them now if you wanna ask them here. I think we'll probably have more the next go round, but I will say again, thank you for joining us today. Let us know how you like the webinar. Reply. You'll get a link to the recording. I'm not sure which recording, this one or the other one. It's just like webinar Yahtzee. I love it. It's bananas. So, and that's it from me. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.